Hi, I'm Casey Ross. I'm the creator of Arcade Fire, The Redemption of Billy Mitchell, and you are listening to Scene World Podcast.
Hey, sup, it's the Scene World Podcast. I'm still here.
Right,
What's going
yes,
on?
and me too.
What is happening?
So in a minute, we will be talking to Christian Leuenberg. To Be On Pod is his podcast. He's doing with a friend,
talking
a
to
German
the competition.
one. And
you have nice lighting right now. Is it like sunset or something?
Yeah, well, it's starting to be, but I also have my lights on the ceiling, as always, actually.
Well, you just got you leaned back and you got like an orange kind of glow to you. And I was like, oh, maybe there's the sun's coming in the window or something.
No, I have the shutters closed.
Okay.
But so
whatever, it's all good.
Anyway, so this kind of ruined it.
No, it didn't.
Well, I wanted to explain what we are interviewing about,
let's do that. We're talking to the competition. We're talking to Christian Leuenberg, To Be On Pod. He has a podcast that is going on right now. It's not in English, which means he's really not the competition, and he used to be with us at Scene World a long time ago as our webmaster. So
right.
So really, he's not the competition. He's a good friend of ours, and yeah.
But before that, some news.
Yes.
I got 3 news items.
I have none.
Yes. Number 1 would be that on October the 7th, there will be No Man's Sky released on the Switch.
Oh.
Which is quite nice because the game went from zero to hero.
Yes.
In 2016, when it was released, it was, well, a shell of a game because they promised so many things in the game that weren't even there. And over the years, and they are still expanding it to the day with new features, new adventures, and so on.
It's one of the few games I play, actually, on the PC.
Yeah, so it went from very negative to very good on Steam in the ratings. And so...
Aren't they working on another game, too?
I have no idea. But Hello Games is doing now the impossible and converting the game to the Switch.
That's impressive. That is impressive to because that is a big game.
I know.
Although it does, all the planets are procedurally generated, which is an interesting thing because
not only the plants but the whole
right. But
planets.
But it makes that's why I said planets. But it makes it so that you don't have to have that much data on your computer because it's just basically it's just some binary data or whatever that it's able to do and render that stuff. But there was another game that they were working on, I read, that was supposed to be almost as ambitious as No Man's Sky.
Okay.
And I'm trying to figure out what that is. Give me a minute. Oh, it's also been announced for macOS.
Let me see.
Oh, hey now. That's pretty big. Probably not for Intel macOS. It's probably going to be the Apple, the Apple Silicon, but
of course for the new ones.
Yeah, which annoys me because I still have an Intel Mac. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, okay, The Last Campfire is a game that they were doing, and maybe, yeah, okay. Just pretend I never said anything.
Okay. Well, so the next news item is we received a press release from Pulsar. That's actually working on a game called Lakia, The Lost Island. And it's a modern game adventure developed exclusively for the C64 and +4 platforms.
The +4.
Exactly. And
who has a +4?
Many people in the east of Europe, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and so on.
Okay.
That is what the biggest market was there, according to an interview I did 8 years ago with Bill Hurd from Commodore.
Yeah, I know they got a bunch of them, and in the UK it was a thing for a bit because it competed with it was one of the cheaper that and the 16.
Right, and it's going to be released on the 14th, so that means 2 days after this recording, as a free version on either CSDB or a +4 portal. We will link to that in the podcast description. And also there will be for the autumn of 2022, it will be on a cartridge from Protovision and on floppy disks for Psytronic.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's interesting because the +4 line, the C16, the +4. Was there another one, or I think it was just those two. They have pros and cons in that they have more colors than the 64, so the graphics can be a lot better.
But worse sound copy.
Exactly. Yeah. They don't have a SID. Well, you can retrofit a +4 with a SID, I believe, but I don't know that the game is going to support that. So, so that's where you kind of have the and looking at the screenshots, and I'm looking at them right now. You can see that expanded palette that the 64, because the 64 has got very
16 colors.
It's got 16 colors, but the 16 colors that it has are like, I'm trying to word this in a way that doesn't.
Well, it's still a better palette than the EGA on the PC.
It is a great palette. I love the 64's palette because it is, earthy maybe would be the term that you'd use. It's like browns and greens and stuff like that, where you can really like do really nice graphics with it. And it doesn't have like the spectrum, the
color clashes.
Yeah, right. Well, no, I mean, we have that with the high res mode in the 64, but things like the Spectrum and the other machines that were out at the time, they had these jarring bright yellow and bright blue and bright orange and red and all this stuff. And the 64 is more muted. It's like these like grungy colors.
A bit like the NES.
Yeah. The NES had more colors though too. I think I had like 64 or something. But yeah, I mean, it had an interesting palette. But looking at the screenshots from this game, I can see that they're using the +4 platform palette for some of these screenshots, and there are benefits in that. Like one of the big problems you have with the 64 as a graphics guy is that you cannot skin. If you're drawing a person, flesh tone is fucking impossible. Right, so you always end up, if you look at pictures, and I'll send you. You're editing this one, right? I'll send you some pictures where it's like, in order to get like a good gradient, you end up having to use greens and blues and stuff in like your in like the face, and it's like that's not or grays and because you got pink and you got red and orange, but they don't look like skin.
Depends on what kind of skin color you're after.
Yes, exactly. But a lot of times you got to sort of goof around with it.
Caucasian is impossible almost.
Yes, Caucasian is impossible. And because or you just end up looking like a freaking marshmallow or something.
Or a pig.
Yes. But that's so I can see in some of the screenshots that they're showing here that they do have good flesh tone. Is the best way that I can say it.
Well, it's good that we get now press releases, so we don't have to dig up the news ourselves. Right. All right. Well, let's jump to Christian Leuenberg.
Yes, Christian Leuenberg is over there waiting for us in when was this? Like February?
I guess March.
Yeah.
Right. Then bye.
That went well.
So, today, another guest as always, and this time it's actually somebody we knew before because he has been working with us. Christian Leuenberg has been our previous webmaster.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, hi Jörg, hi AJ.
Hello.
Thanks for inviting me.
Anytime.
It's an honor to be on your show, actually.
Yes. So the reason is because you tweeted us that you actually, not tweeted, but you sent a message on Twitter that you actually started your own show and left a comment on our Andrew Fisher special YouTube video.
Yes, I started a new podcast project with a friend of mine just a couple of weeks ago, actually. And so I'm into retro gaming again, and I thought, what are my fellow friends from Scene World doing at the moment? And I just browsed your podcasts and randomly picked that Andrew Fisher show. And you were then talking about me when it comes to that Charles Martinet interview. So that was pretty funny, actually. And I thought I need to write to you.
Yes, because people always wonder, how do we approach VIP people and convince them to be our guest? And in the case of Charles Martinet, we simply could say us already do it to our webmaster who interviewed already for his own Nintendo platform. So that was pretty easy. And then that, of course, would work because we were no really strangers. Yeah. Well, it was one of our first podcasts, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was what was that? Which one was that? That was surprisingly early on in the run.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Maybe I was still webmaster at that time.
You must have been.
Yes, of course. Sure. Otherwise, we wouldn't have written to Martin to Charles saying, "Hey, our webmaster is a person."
Yeah,
you know.
True.
That makes sense.
Makes sense.
It's making a better impression than saying our former webmaster.
Number 6. That was episode 6.
Number 6. Okay.
Yikes.
That must be after number 5, which was our 3D Realms one.
Yeah, this was March of 2015, so it's
exactly
going way back.
Here's the funniest thing. I remember prior to discussing interviewing Charles Martinet that I was discussing with AJ. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Charles Martinet. And I'm like, no, he is French Canadian.
I totally.
And then we made a promo, one episode earlier for his appearance on this Danish cosplay show. And then he was like, oh God, it's really not Martinet. So,
yeah.
and then I was like, I told you, French Canadian. Yeah. Anyway, let's start with our typical question. That is, how did you get involved into computer and retro and all that stuff?
Back in that time, it wasn't retro at all.
Yeah.
I remember my brother had a Commodore C16, and that must have been in the mid 80s. I don't know, 85. 86, somewhere around that time.
The black sheep of the family.
Yeah, and what I remember is that he was always trying to get games to load, but it didn't work as it should. And so I think maybe half a year later or something, he got a C128. And I got into it at all and was fascinated by all those games that we could play then. And later on, I bought that machine from my brother, and I still own it.
Oh.
Still here in my house. Yeah, so it started around 85, 86 with the Commodore.
Nice.
And I actually used that machine until mid-90s when I got my first Windows PC. So I think maybe 95 must have been. Yeah, so pretty long time actually. Everyone else was already into Windows or Apple or whatever. Still used my Commodore.
Yeah, I think I used mine until 2000 or so.
Okay.
And the only reason I stopped using it was because it literally broke. Like I couldn't use it.
Yeah. But it was, it worked all the time. But if you compared it to all your friends' computers and it was a bit slow and graphics were a bit crappy, then it was time to get a new one. Yeah, but I still own it and still fascinated by the machine.
128 or the 128D?
No, the 128, just new.
Oh, okay. Okay.
1571 disk drive. Yeah. So still working.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still enjoy retro gaming. I had back in that time period, I had also an NES console and later on SNES, etc., all that Nintendo stuff. But I would say that 8 and 16-bit games are just what is fascinating me still today. So I'm not into modern gaming actually. I don't have any modern console, but yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. What makes a good game isn't necessarily the modernity of it, but the gameplay, how it plays. Yeah. Like Super Mario Brothers, or Super Mario Brothers 3, actually, I think is the best one.
Yeah.
But you can make it look better, but it just plays well. So that's what makes it a good game.
Yeah. And I think if you have those limited graphics, you really have to, especially if you're a kid or a child, you really have to make all those lags in your mind. You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. In modern days, everything is polished and everything is there, and it's more like a movie. So although they are, of course, they are great games. I'm sure, but
but that's a good point because one of my favorite games ever is this game called Space Rogue on the C64. It was on the Amiga and Mac and PC and whatnot too back in the day. But yeah, it was very much you're reading text. You never see any of the characters. They're just a figure on the screen. You walk up to them and then you talk to them and you can choose your answers and stuff. But as a kid, you do put a lot more like you're having a conversation and your brain is filling in like what they sound like and what they look like and how you're acting and all that stuff. And it is much more of an imagination thing than today, where it's the difference between reading a book and then watching the movie.
Yeah. And I totally understand why Nintendo didn't want like all the characters having real dialogues in the games like Zelda. It totally makes sense because you just have all that to the gamers' imagination. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Interesting. Here's another thing. Chris is the reason why I started using ICQ.
Oh, really?
Yes, I found his homepage back then, which was, I think, C64 files.
Yeah.
And I figured that he has ICQ, so I installed ICQ. And I remember this was in January 20... And yeah, in January in the year 2000. Right.
Okay.
That's where I got internet access on an analog modem, and I installed ICQ, and I had this master plan of talking to at least one person from every country in the world. Of course, that never happened.
So by oh my god, my brain's not working today. I'm sorry. Just by association, then he's the reason that I got into ICQ, because the only reason I joined ICQ is because of you.
Oh, perhaps, yeah. I didn't know that, actually. Confessions Day.
And I apologize in advance. I had fasting blood work, so if I don't eat a sandwich, I'm going to die in the middle of this podcast. And I know nobody likes it when I'm during this, but you understand.
That's true.
So
that's funny. I think I started C64 files in 98 or 99. I'm not sure, but must have been late 90s. And first of all, it was just a subpage of my personal page. And then I thought I could just do a dedicated page to it. And then I started C64 files. And and then I met Jörg over ICQ.
Exactly.
And I think we just started with mirroring the SceneWorld DiskMax downloads. And I'm not sure if I really started that first page for SceneWorld. I'm not sure.
The first page I started myself.
Okay.
It looked very CSDB-ish, I remember, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
I've actually got a screenshot of it, which we can
Yeah,
put.
Really?
But you can still look at all the homepages via archive.org, the Wayback Machine, of course.
And if watching the YouTube version of this podcast, we'll just put up a screenshot of
Right. Actually, the first design I did, there was a page called Graphic City, and I just copied from there some buttons with people on it, and then using paint and making descriptions on the buttons. So that was very rude. It still had frames.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I used notepads to do this thing.
Cool.
Yeah,
And
that's how you did it back then. You used that
exactly.
Notepad, HTML.
And I remember 2 years later in 2003, Chris took over the website because he said, "You are studying media design."
Yeah.
That is when you started your education in this field, and this was a time where we had a CMS on that page, and me and Andrew were the ones putting in all the new articles and stuff. So that was before AJ put in content. It was Andrew and me. Exactly.
But it was just a static page, right? It was just HTML, and later on I used some PHP stuff in the database, but I think it was mainly just static pages.
I have no idea. I never asked you how you did it.
Okay.
But I know I had to log in, and I could do my own articles, my own newspaper post, and we had a voting poll.
Oh yeah, right.
That's all I remember.
Yeah.
And yes, that is what I do remember. Yeah, but is there anything?
It worked. That's all that matters.
Yeah, it worked.
It worked, yeah.
It worked. And yes, and then I think you switched hosts, and then you were like, okay, now we really need a new website, and then is where we decided to get this redesign in 2013.
Yeah.
So basically 10 years later, that we still have nowadays.
Yeah.
But that only happened in 2013?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was very early before, like, it wasn't that long before we did the podcast then.
No, I think the implementation was done pretty dirty hacks. I'm not a webmaster. Chris is the expert here.
Yeah.
But what Chris doesn't know is that with the GUID there was a problem until it was fixed last year.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I say it worked, which it did.
But perhaps we should explain. We had this problem that suddenly, now I forgot what's called, Spotify. Spotify caused a traffic peak on the web host.
Yeah.
Right? On the web server.
Like every episode.
Exactly. And we found that there is, and actually it was Spotify giving us a hint, because for some reason there was a wrong attribute in the code. So every time we release a new episode, it would flag all past episodes as new as well. So it would every time re-download all MP3 files. And when we had like over 100 at one night, over 100 files of MP3 were downloaded at once from Spotify. And then our web host shut us down. It took us 12 days to find the problem, unfortunately.
Oh my god.
That was, so I believe this podcast implementation was quickly done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we used X, which is just a framework for building a CMS, and it didn't have any plugin or extension that you could use that just works out of the box. So we did a custom thing, and so it must have been this bug in it. If you start a podcast today, you could use just Anchor or whatever, and you have all the tools. You don't need to have any HTML code in it. So that's pretty easy, actually. But yeah, that is custom work.
Didn't we also have an issue with the amount of podcasts that we could have? We had to increase that or something?
No, there was a limitation by Apple, by iTunes, actually.
Right, yeah.
That originally said 300 is the maximum. And then there was a limitation by 500. And now they removed that limitation of 500. Now it's 2,000.
Okay.
That's the latest limitation. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's true what HJ says. The default setting of this Modex RSS feed was 100. And after 100, it would start again at 1. So that means that all the past episodes were not in the RSS feed anymore. Okay. Suddenly our first episode was number 5 or something.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, that's a problem, because we want people to listen to all our past episodes. And at this moment, we didn't have any webmaster. So AJ and I were trying to fix the homepage without knowing what we are doing. And we ended up breaking things.
Yeah, we made it worse.
Yeah. And then we found Menno Peterson, who is a big spot in the Modex community from the Netherlands, and he helped us. We made emergency Skype call for 2 hours to update our homepage. And Ryan Tash himself, the founder of Modex, had a look at it and made sure that everything is working fine. So we got help from the upper Modex people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Just to make sure our homepage is still running.
Cool.
That was when you left, and I remember AJ was panicking, like, call Chris.
Yeah, I was like, call Chris.
And I'm like, no, Chris is not left anymore.
Yeah, he left. He's not going to help us. And I'm like, what are we going to do?
Let you die.
Yeah, just ask him. Call him and ask him. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been a problem, actually.
But anyway, yeah. And nowadays we have a couple of people, fortunately, that know what they are doing, so we can do it ourselves.
Good to know. Yeah,
it's not us.
It's not. Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The ModX thing, you can build nearly everything, but most of it really has to be done by custom coding. But it's a very good system. So I still use ModX, although most of my projects are in WordPress now. But also in WordPress, you have all those plugins you can use also when you do podcasting. But still, then you could run into troubles. If you have default settings in WordPress, that will only give you, I think, 10 items in the RSS feed. So you would have a problem with 100 episodes. So you need to figure out where to do all those customization, etc. Yeah, but glad that your page is working again.
Yeah, I was lucky because I was like, we have no budget. How we are going to pay for Modex Pro support? Yeah. So I was asking around, and I digged my way through it.
Patreon campaign or whatever.
Yeah.
But interestingly,
I think I even said at one point, I was like, dude, I will give you $50 to give to him if you just call him up and have him do something. Jesus.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to find somebody that is volunteering, looking into somebody else's project and continuing it and making modifications.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
And then we actually had a new web host. So now we are hosted partly in Germany, partly in Switzerland.
Okay.
And this guy is a machine. He took 2 weeks and fixed all issues we had with the homepage at once.
Yeah,
nice.
I was like, wow. So that's really very good. But here's something I wanted to mention on the homepage that we had before. I don't know, was that a custom code?
Yeah,
I think it was a custom code. You did this CMS yourself with the login system. And here's the thing I remember. there is a problem. There was a problem in the early 2000s with the Chinese version of Internet Explorer 6.
Oh God.
And I know when people from China with Internet Explorer 6 visited our homepage, they only got a blank page. And I remember you told me you did emergency fix on the homepage. You told me something about the order the code has to load is different on Chinese computers, on Chinese Internet Explorers.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still remember what that was, but our homepage at first didn't display it all on Chinese Internet Explorers.
Yeah, it's true. I remember this story. Yeah, but Explorer is also called Internet Exploder.
Explorer, yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, you don't have to struggle with all those issues in modern web development, not to that extent that you had back in the days.
Yes, if you make a disk Mac that's supposed to run on any C64 model, and then your website doesn't display on every browser around the world, then it's like a little issue.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, now that we've spent 25 minutes airing our grievances.
Good old times. We had to talk about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you said you are currently working on a new podcast, To Be on Pod. Tell us more about that, perhaps.
As you may notice, it's somehow related to that famous C64 game, To Be on Top. Yeah, we mainly just talk about retro games. It's a friend of mine, Björn, and me, and we actually know each other since childhood. Lived in the same neighborhood, and we both had C64 and all those platforms we talked about. And so we actually started that Nintendo website in 2005, I think. And so this is our new project after several years. And it's just the podcast, just the two of us. It's an audio podcast, so no video. And we talk in German, so it's not an international podcast.
Man.
Yeah, and we pick one game per episode. And the only rule we have is we must have been played this game in our childhood. So not games that we just discover these days. And just those old games. And yeah, we mainly talk about C64, NES, Game Boy, SNES, Amiga games, etc.
He called it SNES like you're supposed to call it, Jörg.
Yeah.
He didn't say SNES like children do.
Yeah. Super Nintendo.
Yes.
Yeah, and we published 3 episodes until now. And we have already another 3 done. And we will release these every 2 weeks. And we are planning the next 6 episodes already because people like it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So basically you don't invite guests, you're just talking to each other kind of.
Yeah.
So like the other German podcast called Männerquatsch.
I heard of that. Yeah.
It's a similar concept. I see.
Okay.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you also mentioned a new Nintendo portal from 2005, but that stopped by now, right?
Yeah, that was the Nintendo Wii website we ran back in the days, which was pretty successful actually. We had, when the console was very hyped, we had about 2 million page impressions per month. So This was pretty nice. And we started in 2005. And it was called, nobody knew how that Nintendo console will be named. So everyone was just talking about that project name, which was Revolution. So we called that page N Revolution. And later on, they officially announced that the console will be called Wii. And then we switched our name into Wii Insider. And I think that page ran until 2012, 2013, I don't know. I think 212, but you can still visit the site under weinsider.de, and you'll find all those reviews we did and videos, podcasts, etc. But it's just an archive page. Yeah, but it was pretty successful, and actually Björn and me, we both started it back in 2005, and our goal was just to get some free review games, which worked out actually. But as you might know, the Nintendo Wii had a lot of games and a lot of casual games, and so it wasn't always fun to review all those games. Yeah.
And there's another episode that we have in common. You have been on German television.
Oh yeah.
We have to talk about that because you have been in a Boulevard magazine that was in the evening, and the name was "Can Good Video Game Players Actually Do Actual Sports?" And you were in a bob.
Right, that was in the time when Winter Olympics. I don't know which year it was. 2012, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, and they had every episode. They had one sports bob. What is it called in English? I don't know.
Bobsled?
Yeah. And they asked us. I think they got our contact via the German Nintendo marketing team because they wanted to put the Mario game in it, the Mario and Sonic at Olympic Games game, which was released at that time. So they somehow combined this with me and a friend of mine that also was an editor for the page. So we had to get into that bob with two actual Olympic sportsmen. It was fun, yeah.
You actually sent me a DVD with the recording on it.
Oh yeah, really?
and I think some year later I found a version on YouTube as well. I will see. YouTube. Right. It's on YouTube?
Yeah.
Do you have the link, or should I find it myself?
I can send it to you, yeah.
I think if you just... Perhaps you can put it here so people can see it. Yeah. Yes, I remember you told me about it, and then you sent it on a DVD. But of course, DVD-Rs are barely able to read nowadays, 10 years later. So luckily, there is a digital version on YouTube.
Yeah.
But yes, I remember I was like, Chris... We were talking on the phone. I was like, Chris, you have to send me the recording of this. So
yeah, it was fun actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So the retro really brings you some fame here in Germany for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why, but
oh, the thing is, those were the early days before. Those were the days when it turned from a niche into a bigger niche, and suddenly companies like Nintendo found there is a market for retro.
It's true. Yeah, they launched the Virtual Console on the Nintendo Wii, where you could download all those old games, actually. Yeah, and they released the NES Mini and SNES Mini a couple of years ago. So yeah, there's definitely a market for it. Yeah. And hopefully the podcast is also doing pretty good. And but mainly it's just fun for us to talk about all those games. And that's the main reason why we launched the podcast, actually.
You don't have a bigger meaning behind it, like preserving stories and stuff, like we do. Yeah.
Well, maybe you do. You do because it's fun.
Yeah, but I mean, what means we do it as fun? Of course it's fun. Of course, for me too. But it's, of course, making more fun for me because I know who we talk to. We are the first, and it's unique. And like, I don't know, when we had the interview with Venezuela, that was special, at least from my point of view. But we should mention perhaps why we switched from my homepage to Chris's homepage, and I think you were at Straight Toe at this time as a web host.
Yeah, might be. I'm not sure. Yeah.
The reason was that after we released the first issue of Scene World, I got a phone call from Bavaria 3 radio station in Germany, and they made an interview with me around 30 seconds, and it was broadcasted a week later at 2 a.m. in the night, so it was like a filler. And a week later, our homepage was down because of too much access to the web host. At this point, we were on the free space of Arcor, which is not around anymore. And this is how I was like, Chris, we have a problem. We have too many visitors. Our homepage is constantly going down.
People like us too much.
Yeah,
we're famous.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yes. So 22 years ago, it was a different world. You had very much limited traffic on web space.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
stuff.
wow.
I think I started the first C64 files page on free hosting at GeoCities, or what is it called? Maybe
Yeah,
you had
GeoCities
those
by Yahoo.
URLs, and yeah.
Exactly.
So that was the first version, I think. Yeah, and then later on I switched onto a real hosting. If I had the problem to serve hundreds of disk images, so you had problems with web space actually. Yeah, so I switched to that host. And I think there was also one time when they shut down the page because they weren't sure if all those disk images were violating any copyrights.
Is that the reason why you stopped it in the end?
No, I just lost interest in maintaining the page actually, and yeah, so I stopped doing this. But yeah, it had some traffic on it. I later used a dedicated FTP server. I didn't had the website itself. It was just an FTP server later on, and but then somehow I lost the interest in it. And
And how did you regain interest now that you said you are continuing your project now doing a podcast? What made you regaining the interest into retro?
Just asked me if I would join him doing this project. And first he was about modern games, and this is just not my topic. So I said no, and then he came up with the retro idea, and I don't know, somehow I just got interested again and grabbed my old consoles and threw in some games, and so I'm enjoying it now again.
So sometimes you just need to get away from it for a bit.
Yeah, that's true. And I thought, what is the best way to use an old game console on a modern display with HDMI, etc. And I finally found the Retron consoles. I don't know if you know about this.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
It's just
sure.
like system on a chip thing, and you have HDMI output, and it's pretty cool. Most of the games work, and the picture's pretty clear. So
I remember the day when the patents and the copyright of the NES chips were not valid anymore. Suddenly, all kinds of NOEC devices, NES on a chip devices appeared.
Yeah.
All kinds of.
Yeah, that's true.
Bootleg stuff.
Yeah. I even got one. One for the Famicon card, which is portable. And interestingly, it says on the manual that it is for Master System games.
Okay.
Which is of course not true because it's a Famicom clone. But for some reason, they confused Sega with Nintendo in the manual. But at least as long as what he is selling, what is written in the manual doesn't matter. But it was like, okay, portable Master System that plays Famicon cartridges.
Funny thing, yeah.
Interesting thing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So next to the podcast, do you plan any other projects? Any new portal? Or is that all your journey in the retro community for now?
Yes, for now, this is it. One project I'm also running since, I think, 2 years now is another podcast, but it's just a complete different topic. It's about Austrian economics, and so nothing to do with gaming.
Okay.
And and also I'm trying to do some music again. So Jörg, you might know I did these mixes back in 2001 or whatever it was.
Yes.
And you asked me about a remix, and maybe I will do it.
I don't even remember what remix I asked you about.
I don't know. I need to check my ICQ history.
Yeah.
I don't have this history anymore. But didn't you tell me you did the remix finally?
Started it 10
You
years
started,
ago,
but
never finished it. No.
Okay.
And I'm currently
Yes, I remember. I loved your In the Park remix from Last Ninja 2.
Yeah, I did this one and the Gianna Sisters intro. And for both remixes, I just used Cubase on Atari ST.
Oh.
Yeah, and I mainly just used a MIDI keyboard and playing all those parts. And it's not a real remix, I would say. It's just playing the original tunes on a MIDI keyboard on a MIDI sequence, actually. Yeah, that was pretty funny. And I think you can still find these two remixes if you search for it. But I'm currently trying to build my own recording studio.
Awesome.
I bought some analog gear, which is behind me, but I need some expert to maintain all those stuff. And so I'm maybe when everything is finished, I maybe start finally your remix on analog gear.
Now I'm really trying to remember what remix I wanted to.
I don't know.
To get from you.
I've been using an old Mac G4 because it's got the FireWire stuff, and you can use the old Pro Tools. Because I think an earlier version of Pro Tools is free now.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Support and but it works.
Wow. Now I remember all those conversations and moments we had together. Like, whoa.
20 years ago, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, back then at the beginning, you never knew if things work out, and suddenly it grew a lot. It's amazing. I remember that, at the beginning you told us we have to make the episodes of the podcast more regularly, because at the beginning we had 6 months between them, and iTunes would take a week until it would appear. Because we didn't do it regularly enough, and then we started doing it regularly.
Yeah,
it was a real trouble 8 years ago to make a new podcast. You had to request it at Apple. Then you had to get a FeedBurner account, and wow, it was a real pain back then to set this thing up. I remember that
when we started the Nintendo website. We had also a podcast in 2005. So this was pretty early. I think nearly no one in Germany, at least, was producing podcasts. We also had the problem that when we started with video capturing, there weren't any devices you could buy on Amazon that captures your console. So we had some hacky things with a PC and a TV card with analog input. It was pretty crappy. And we couldn't upload those videos on YouTube because you had this limitation of 10 minutes or 50 minutes, whatever it was. And our video episodes were at least 30 minutes. So
exactly.
We were a bit too early, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even back then, when Spotify became a thing, we had to try 5 times to get listed.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first 4 times we were denied. Then we were listed for 1 day, and then we were removed again. So that was a real pain.
Why were we removed?
I don't know. I remember you told me that you only could listen to certain episodes. But the actual listing wasn't there anymore, so it took a while until Spotify.
We just didn't like how our faces looked.
Yeah.
But we don't like it, guys.
Those Commodore nerds.
Yeah.
That changed when Spotify switched from the Google form manual process to the automatic process where you just submit the RSS feed file, RSS feed URL, and it would automatically take everything from the RSS feed.
Yeah. And then they got really more into podcasts too. And that's,
Yeah.
And now they're seeing a mass exodus of people because of the fact that they got into podcasts and through guys like Joe Rogan a ton of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we started to be on pod with Anchor because I didn't want to set up a new website and all those things. I just wanted to make it pretty easy.
The pain with Scene World was enough for the rest of your day, the rest of your life.
Yeah, but it's so easy and so really, it's light years ahead of what we did back in the days. So that's pretty cool, actually. So you could use your smartphone to record your episodes within the Anchor app and then upload it, and there you go. That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
I've read once that Anchor has a disadvantage that they put in advertisements.
No, as far as I know, you can use the monetization option, but you do not need to.
Don't have to. Okay.
Yeah,
I
right.
see. Okay.
So, and Anchor is now a Spotify company, so they work pretty well together. So you are immediately on Spotify if you release your first episode.
Yeah, we go the hard way.
Yeah,
of
that's
being
true.
self-hosted.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the thing. At one hand, one side you are freedom, you are independent, you have your freedom, you are independent. On the other hand, you sometimes have to email service, hey, there's an episode's missing, can you please re-index us? That's another thing that sometimes happens. Even when Amazon started having podcasts, they for some reason cut off our podcast description in the middle. Despite there's all in this RSS feed, even if the RSS feed is 100% fine, still sometimes there are hiccups in the listings of those podcast directories.
Yeah, if they do some changes in their requirements, you need to actually code your RSS feed again, and but on the other hand, as you said, you have all in your own hand, and this is of course an advantage.
So is there any direction you want to go with the podcast? Is it just for fun, or do you want to grow and stuff?
We just agreed on we will do this 1 year and let's see where it gets. Maybe we have so many listeners and we can decide whatever we want to do with it. Or maybe it's just 10, then it's also okay. But we will just constantly put out new content every 2 weeks for 1 year. Now, let's see where it's getting to.
Yeah.
You said the games have to be games that you played as a child.
Yeah.
So the problem here is at some point your childhood ends. And you have no more games you can talk about.
The hell you say? I'm still but a young something.
We could do an episode for Last Ninja 1, Last Ninja 2, and Last Ninja 3, and Last Ninja Remix.
Yeah, people play a ton of games in their youth. You could probably go on indefinitely.
Yeah, I think we have enough games to talk about, and even if we decide to do an episode again about one game we already discussed, because people just love the game or whatever, that wouldn't be a problem at all, I think.
Right. The best thing is you could lie and nobody noticed.
That's exactly right. There's a huge game catalog, and you can just pick any of those and say you played it, and that's cool.
Yeah.
It's like those Facebook comedy videos where they make a huge disclaimer saying this is just for entertainment. Yeah. This didn't happen in real.
It's a fictional story.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, why not?
Nice. It's good to have you back in the retro scene, even if it's just the podcast scene. Yeah. But isn't there the thing that now there are too much podcasts, and especially retro is not niche enough anymore?
That's true to some extent, but I think that most projects are not able to deliver over a certain time. So they start and they have 10 episodes, and then you need to wait another 6 months until the next episode comes out. And we really want to hold this up to 2 weeks, every 2 weeks a new episode, and really constantly putting those episodes online. So we produce 6 episodes on one production day. And
okay.
So this is our goal, because I think this is pretty the way you need to publish your content very constantly. And And it's for the fun.
It's true. It's true. You could do it like the Retro Hour podcast, which is the most listened retro podcast ever, and they make weekly episodes with guests.
Yeah.
And oh my god! And I'm like, it's already stressful to have 2 episodes per month. Now imagine 4 episodes per month. Oh my god!
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you just do it as a hobby, this is pretty hard to make over a longer time. But if you monetize it and you have enough listeners and maybe you use Ko-fi or Patreon or whatever to get some money for your work, well, maybe then you can make all those episodes with interviews and etc. But that's a lot of work, actually.
Yeah,
that's true.
Hopefully, we are still doing this in 20 years. Let's see.
Yeah.
We need to hire a producer because we produce this ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's the most time-consuming part of it is the editing and getting it all together and fixing the errors and whatnot.
But I learned a lot about post-editing of video and audio.
Yes. Oh, so have I. Because
sometimes what the guests have is so horrible that you can't release it that way. No way. No.
Totally.
Okay. Yeah, but you're doing a video podcast, which is even more work, actually.
Oh, yes, it is.
There's no doubt about it.
Well, the thing is, originally we started out as an audio podcast, and still we have episodes where we don't have videos because people use the phone or whatever.
Yeah.
But yes, it actually happened that we got a YouTube channel because we had a guest that was like, my girlfriend is getting ready in the bathroom, so make sure that you make a video version out of it. I'm like, okay, we didn't plan to, and then we got the feedback, can you please also put all your past episodes on YouTube, even if it doesn't have video? So then people were like, I prefer seeing who you are talking to. And like, okay, I get you. Yeah.
We have an audio version that has turned into a video podcast.
Yeah. We have a YouTube channel as well, but it's just the cover artwork and the audio file, so no video. You can find us on YouTube as well. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Anchor is your main platform.
That's the podcast hosting platform, whatever you want to call it, and using this for publishing the episodes. But you can find the podcast nearly everywhere, if it's Apple or Google Podcasts or whatever it is.
Right.
You don't go through hoops like we do with Yandex in Russia and iVox in Spain and.
But I think most of these platforms just automatically search for new feeds.
No, they don't.
I mean, not all, but some of them, right? It might take some while, but
not those.
Okay.
No, Yandex, you really have to, especially submit it.
Okay.
And also in the Indian area, I also had to submit it. Yeah.
Mm.
And right now, tomorrow, I'm going to hire somebody on Fiverr listing us on the Chinese podcast directories because since 2 years in China, English podcasts are trending. So I'm like, okay, we are an English podcast. We should be listed in China.
Until you got censored, yeah.
Actually, I checked. Our homepage isn't censored in China.
Cool.
We didn't do anything to be angry about.
No.
Yeah, but of course, that's the thing with a German podcast. You are a niche of a niche in a niche. Right?
That's true. That's true.
But you don't have the problems to convince your guests because you don't have guests in the first place. And even if you had guests, they would speak German with you, and you don't have to convince them like your English is fine.
It's totally fine, yes. No, maybe we will have interview guests in the future. I don't know, but the current concept is just the two of us talking about the games, but who knows?
Yeah, you're not doing a ASCII question-y type of thing. You're playing games and talking and whatnot. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily. You could have a guest on wherein you add someone else to the playing the game stuff, but it doesn't really turn much into an interview in as much as just interaction with a guest.
Do you actually play the games in the podcast
No.
episodes?
No.
That would
We're
be
just discussing
interesting. People just hear.
Yeah. I don't know. Without any video, I don't know if this is the right concept.
But there are some distinguishable sounds, like from Pit Stop, for example.
Yeah.
Everybody would recognize that's Pit Stop.
Yeah, true. And we have real time. You need to wait on the loading times, of course, now of the C64.
Exactly. But people constantly forget when they say about the loading times. People constantly forget that there is fast loaders. There was fast
True.
loaders.
Yeah.
It's not how people remember it. People remember it. Oh, the game took 15 minutes to load. In reality, it took 3 because there was a fast loader in it.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. Snapshot. Or here in Germany, we had, we still have it, Action Replay.
Yep.
Or Final Cartridge 3. So
Yeah.
it's really the thing, people remember it wrong.
That's true. And I remember we had on each disc, we had a fast loader copied onto it. So we didn't use the cartridge, just the program on the disc.
Yep.
On nearly every disc side, we had a fast loader on it.
Yeah.
So,
That's also possible. Yeah, you had a little program that would be a software fast loader.
Yeah, right.
Of course, the freezer cartridges with the fast loader had some advantages, like you could back up your game and resume afterwards and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's actually amazing. It's the same how people remember the blocky graphics that weren't blocky because of the insufficient
CRT.
screen resolution and CRT technology. Yes. So it's the same with tape, by the way. The tape games had fast loaders after a while. So the only games that had bad loading times.
Very quickly they had them. It was only the very early games that really didn't have kind of a fast loader in it.
You said it before. I could say it exactly. Just the very early tape and disc games didn't have fast loaders. Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. And I also remember the old games like they were pixel graphics. But when it comes to the first 3D games and 64 games or whatever, I remember them better than they actually were. This is where you have your anti-aliasing in your head.
Yeah. The
really
rosy-colored sunglasses, yeah.
Yeah, and they really look like crap, actually, if you play them today. But the 8-bit and 16-bit games, they were just like they were. Some pixels.
There was a game that I played when I was younger. I'd say this was probably like 1990 or so, maybe early 91. This is a game by EA, Sentinel Worlds 1, and I never finished the game because I lost the EA games came with this orange paper or white paper with orange print that gave you all the shortcuts or the key commands, and I lost that. So there was a part of the game that I did not know. There was no instructions on how to play this part, so I could never proceed beyond this bit.
Wow.
Years later, but it was always one of my favorite games. I spent a lot of time on it playing when I was younger. And for some reason, the cracked versions online never worked. So I finally found an original version online, and I bought it. And my plan was that as an adult, I'm going to play this game again. And I played it for one day, and I'm like, this is freaking awful. And but in my youth, like that was just what games were. That's how it played, and I forgot about all it's 4 disc size, and you're flipping discs between everything you do, and it's just it's brutal, and I never managed to finish it.
Yeah, those games were pretty hard, actually, most of them.
Yeah,
and you didn't have any tutorial level where somehow you're shown how to control the game or whatever.
Yes, but in my mind, like it was this wonderful, awesome sci-fi game with a great story and stuff, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go play that again. It's gonna be great." And one day it took me to realize I can't play this. I can't do this.
Yeah. Here's the thing I realized in 2016 when I got a crack in my hip. I was laying in bed all day. Just because that was the only position I was allowed to spend my days. So I got a Game Boy, and I realized that compared to my childhood, my reflexes are not as good as they used to be. But I have a more strategy a better strategy in how to complete and go through the levels. So after over 20 years, I finally managed to complete Turtles and see the end screen, because now as a child I didn't understand that there is a better way to go through the levels and hit the enemies.
Yeah.
I was just compensating by reflexes, by speed. But as an adult, you are like, oh, there's a strategy behind how they actually move. It's a pre-programmed pattern. So if you do this and that, done.
Yeah, that was I played when I was a kid. I had a Game Boy, and I had Super Mario Land. I think that was the Game Boy version. Yeah. And I didn't actually beat the game. It's actually really easy to beat. It's not a hard game at all. But I never beat it until I was in my early 30s and was bored, and
exactly.
Yeah, and then suddenly realized, oh, this is actually really easy to beat.
Yeah. Actually, the Super Mario Land, I completed it as a kid, and I played it, I don't know, 20 years later, and I instantly completed it again.
You are a magician there.
Yeah.
As a kid, it was really more about the novelty of having Super Mario on this. It wasn't tiny by today's standard, on this beige chunk of plastic. But
with the green colored. Four green colors, I think.
It was more about just killing some time and playing a couple levels and then shutting it down and whatnot. And then as I got older, I had actually time to kill, so it was like, oh, now I'll actually try playing it, and realized how easy it was to beat.
Exactly. And here's the thing, as a non-English native speaker that AJ can't relate to, but I figured out as an adult, now that I know English, those games had a story.
True.
Yeah.
I played Super Mario, I played Turtles without knowing that Splinter was kidnapped by Shredder, or that the princess was kidnapped by Bowser. I had no idea.
I don't think that's a non-native English speaker thing. I think that's just an everybody thing, because as a kid, I never took into consideration the storyline behind the games.
Yes, but you could read it.
You could read it, but most kids didn't. Most kids just played the game. You're just a guy wandering around eating mushrooms or something, and so you're not thinking about the story of the game. It's just the game that came with the thing.
I remember I had one Japanese game on the Game Boy. I don't know which one it was, but I couldn't read anything. I just had to figure out which menu will bring me to the game, actually. And so I had no clue about the story, actually. But it was fun.
Right. Yeah.
As a kid, I only knew the words I need to know, like game over, continue, retry, and yes and no.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
There wouldn't be my grandfather explaining to me what the words mean. It was like, figure it out yourself.
Yeah. I had one NES game that was hard to beat without knowing any English. That was Swords and Serpents, a role-playing game, and you had tons of dialogues in it.
Yeah.
And I had no clue.
Yeah.
So just ask my father, what does this mean? What does this mean?
Yeah.
What is he saying? Yeah.
But as you brought up before with imagination, that's where, as a kid and on these old 8-bit games, your imagination kind of fills in the gaps. Like, I had a whole narrative for Mario Brothers before I actually understood what the actual game was.
Yeah.
There's a story about it, by the way. Just a few years back, I was like, okay, one of the last, final, and one of the rarest games on the NES is Ducktales 2.
Okay.
And it's super expensive. It was expensive 5 years ago already, super expensive. I found a very reasonable priced one from France.
Okay.
And I was like, wonderful, getting that. And I was really surprised because the seller actually put a post-it on the cartridge and said, thank you, and a winking smiley. And I was like, what is that hidden message supposed to mean? So I put it in my NES and I can't play it. Because it's one of the few games on the NES that was localized in various languages.
Okay.
And the seller must have thought, oh, a buyer from Germany. What an idiot.
And Germany's right next to France. I'm sure there's lots of Germans that speak French.
A few.
Yeah.
What does this thank you and winking smiley supposed to mean? So now I have one of the rarest games in original in a good condition that I can't really play because
Probably even rarer because it's the French version.
probably. Yes, the problem is you have to answer questions
Okay.
during the game, and you have to make multiple choice, so you can't really play it.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to
They got
enter
that
the
Google
levels.
Translate on your phone now. You can just hold your phone up to the screen and it'll translate it right there on there.
With the CRT?
Sure. Yeah, I've done that. It works.
Oh God!
Yeah, totally.
Let's pause the game.
Yeah.
Put this controller away. Put the phone up.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. Just hold the game up. Be like, all right, that's what it says, and then they'll continue on.
And my thought was like, why is nobody bidding on this French version of on this game from France? It's a good price. It's a good condition. And then, okay, now I know why.
Yes. No.
I'm telling you, because I'm sure that the English version of the game is much more common than the French. You've probably got that thing's probably going to be worth a whole hell of a lot more in the future.
Yeah,
because
probably.
How many of the French? It's probably the only French version of that game. Like the only French cartridge that still remains.
Right.
Yeah, you've got the one.
Yeah.
I'm happy enough that I have one of still 5 existing copies of Hugo for the Euro 64.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
They're
In French?
only, no, that was only released in Danish.
Oh.
Ah,
They
yes.
only released it in Denmark. That is why it's so rare, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
It sold so shitty that they never localized it into English and other languages.
So how do you play that one?
You know what to do because it's identical to the German TV shows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because you should know it. It was in USA as well. It was in many countries. Hugo, a little animated troll, that was a call-in show where childs have to use their digital multi-frequency tone telephone and control the character on the television.
No.
And there was always a delay.
I don't think it was in the U.S.
Oh, it was.
I'm looking at the Wikipedia entry, and it's a bunch of different countries, but not here.
Not in America?
Not in America. No.
Okay.
It's in the UK.
Okay, then it was UK. I knew that it was an English speaker, so it was UK. Okay.
We had a game like that. It was called. It was a channel. God, this is really old. This is before that even. And it was a local channel. It was a New York TV station, Channel 11 WPIX, and they did this Pix TV thing, which was a little video game, and you would call in. The kids would call in and play the game over the phone. But it wasn't this. It was. And then and man, wow, that's obscure. I can't remember. I can't believe I just remembered any of that.
But let me finish it. The interesting thing about this game is that this game was invented in Denmark by a Danish company and then sold throughout the world. So they made so they got moderators moderating the kids and so on. And the problem was there was a lot of delay between the cable TV, the signal reaching you, the phone that you had to press on. But here's the interesting thing is the game ran on TV, right? On an Amiga 500.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. They released the home version, which was basically the version from the TV, just without the dial-in technique.
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah. So Hugo is an Amiga game.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to go back to the Commodore.
But you've got the C64 version of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They made a 64 version for cartridge, not on disc or something, because it had sequences with digital speech in it.
Mm.
And it would constantly, when you hit a wall and you would die, it would constantly say something in Danish with a full screen animation. So it was quite on the technical side, quite nice. On the gameplay side, it was only one level in the mine. So it was pretty boring. It was very repetitive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that's a little story about Hugo, and that many people don't know. It's
Interesting.
actually true. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually. Yeah.
Nice.
Right. Now Chris learned something as well.
Yes,
knowledge,
that's true.
Nerd knowledge you never knew. You
Probably will never use again.
Yeah, that's right.
you never knew existed, and it's utterly unimportant.
Yeah, completely useless.
Yeah. But you never know. Maybe there's this one day you need.
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
have
one
this.
day this may be important. One
Yeah,
day you'll be on
it will
a
be
game
important.
show or something, and
Yeah.
someone will ask you a question. And you can say, "What is Hugo?"
If you're ever on the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire,
Right.
and the 1 million question is, tell me
Yes,
about
sure.
Hugo,
Yeah.
the TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You will see.
Sure.
Nice.
They should hire me to bring in nerd questions. I
Oh,
would
yeah.
Seriously.
totally make
Well,
sure
listen, no one
nobody
would ever
gets the
get
1
them.
million.
Yeah, no one will ever win.
Yeah. Will be unfair, actually.
Yeah.
Except Andrew Fisher. He knows everything.
Okay.
He is the professor. He knows everything about every game. He is like a walking search engine for video game knowledge. Whatever. Super amazing.
Cool.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
So where can people find your stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, actually on tobeonpod.de. This is the main website. You will find all episodes on it. And yeah, maybe later on I will put the new music on my personal website, which is loenbergmusic.com. You will find all releases I did there and maybe new stuff as well pretty soon.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Cool.
And Twitter? You're on Twitter.
not with the podcast, to be
Exactly.
on pod, on Twitter, on Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome.
You have to because you contacted me via Twitter.
That's true, yeah.
Yes. we will put links to everything in the podcast description and in
Cool.
the video.
Yeah.
right here.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
link-
Nice.
check it all out.
So
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Good night,
yes,
Chris.
good night.
Good night.
Bye bye.